My name's John Knagg and I work in the British Council. I'm a senior advisor for English in the British Council. I work with my colleagues all around the world, helping them especially to work with ministries of education to help improve the teaching and learning of English in school and university systems and throughout life in their societies. For me, I guess why applied linguistics is a lot of things, but the most interesting part for me is what applied linguistics tells us about language teaching, or English language teaching is what I'm particularly interested in. And so for me, I guess I think of applied linguistics as the science of ELT, the science of language teaching, the science that is behind what people do. And so obviously it's to do with studying languages, but for me it's also, applied linguistics is also to do with studying education and studying learning. A lot of it is the science of education and how people learn. Yeah, I think that's the main thing. And I think, so to give you some examples of what applied linguistics might do, I think applied linguistics does things for us, like really looks at the English language and tells us how people use it. Yeah, and so for example, I would say without applied linguistics, people and English language teachers might think that the written language has the same grammar as a spoken language, but it doesn't. And applied linguists, the people who've studied the language, have told us that, and that's important for language teachers when they're teaching people to speak, teaching people to read, teaching people to write, to really understand that. One of the big activities we do around the world is work in the teaching of English. So we calculate that there are something like 10 or 12 million teachers of English around the world. So that's the population of a massive city like Mexico City or London or Paris or Tokyo. It's kind of the same number of English teachers around the world as there are medical doctors. Yeah? And that they form a community of practice in a way, usually working in schools, other institutions or in other contexts. And that's the group of people that we want to engage with and we want to support. And I would say that because there's a big demand for English, there's also a huge shortage of language teachers around the world. So it's an interesting area to be in. Now, we see a lot of teaching around the world, and I would say we see a lot of bad teaching as well as good teaching. We see a lot of good teaching, but we see too much teaching that isn't very good. So I think in the British Council, what we want to focus on is not more teaching, but better teaching. And that's where applied linguistics comes in, because I think that applied linguistics and people, researchers and teachers and lecturers and teacher trainers looking at language and looking at learning and looking at what works and what doesn't work is what's going to help improve the quality of teaching around the world. Because, as I said, it's the science, if you like, of language teaching, I would say. And I think that applied linguistics and people working in applied linguistics, not only at universities, but also teachers can work in applied linguistics. I think that can form the leadership of this group of millions of English teachers around the world. You use the word professionals, and I think most people who are working in teaching, who are teachers, want to think that they are professionals. And we certainly, in the British Council, want to think of English language teachers as professionals and to improve the professionalism of English language teachers. So I think that considering applied linguistics and considering the nature of language and the nature of education, the nature of learning, will really help teachers improve that professionalism, which in turn will help improve the standing of of teachers in society across the world, and improve the respect that teachers have, because it will be seen that English language teachers are basing what they do on real evidence that's been shown, that so we know what works and what doesn't work. I think that's really why English language teachers need to have a kind of an interest in applied linguistics. What can professionals like teachers or teacher educators, or maybe people who are writing a lesson plan, or maybe some materials for something else, how can they get involved? I think there are various ways, and maybe it depends on where a person is in their career. For example, a teacher. I think one obvious way is to do further formal study. So, for example, there are, I would say, probably 50 or 60 universities in the United Kingdom that run master's degrees in applied linguistics, or sometimes it's called master's degrees in English language teaching, which is, I'd count as broadly the same thing. So I think that's something that teachers should think about aiming towards. Doesn't necessarily need to be in an English-speaking country, of course. There are many great postgraduate degrees at local universities, and also many online degrees at the moment, some of which have been shown to be just as good quality as face-to-face postgraduate degrees, and I think we'll see much more of that in the future. So I guess that's one thing people can do, and then that gives teachers or ELT professionals a broad idea of what of the breadth of applied linguistics, because applied linguistics covers a lot of different things. Of course, it covers the basics of language, like the grammar, the vocabulary, the pronunciation, but also things like language in society, or sociolinguistics, or second language acquisition, that is how children or how adults come to learn language, so elements of psycholinguistics. And another thing is that teachers may decide that they're more interested in one element of this than the other. I would say another thing that teachers can do is really read some research on applied linguistics, on the science of language teaching. So the obvious places to go are journals like the ELT Journal of Oxford University, or Language Teaching of Cambridge University, or TESOL Quarterly from the United States. They're great journals that come out every quarter or so, every 3 months, and have different articles, and that lets people keep up to date with the most up-to-date thinking in the field. And of course, another thing they can do is log on to our British Council website for teachers of English, teachingenglish.org.uk. And if you go there and you look at professional development, teachers will find our publications, including our research papers. We bring out about 6 research papers every year, and they're all free. They can download them for free. Teacher educators can use them with their teachers in teacher training courses. Language teachers associations can use them for meetings, things like that. And at the same time, I'd also recommend one way of getting involved for language teachers and becoming more professional is to try and be involved in a language teachers or English teachers association. So I guess doing a course maybe, reading articles, and ultimately I think what I'd like to see is more teachers doing some research in their classroom. I think a lot of teachers are afraid of the word research, and I understand that. I think I would have been afraid when I was a teacher, because it's something that people do, very clever people in universities. But it's something, in fact, that all teachers can do, and it's a very valid thing, a very useful thing for teachers especially experienced teachers, to really understand their classes better, to think about their classes and to try different things. Let's try one thing with this group of children. Now let's try this other thing with this other group of children. Let's see what the difference is. Let's write it down. Let's write a short article. Let's pass it over to, it needn't be a worldwide publication. It might be the newsletter of the local English Teachers Association. And I think that's the sort of action that's really going to help the professionalisation of English teachers and English teaching and the improvement of English language learning around the world.